Welcome back to IE. We're going to jump into chapter 2 today of White Monster. As you listen to chapter 2, I want you to think about what the characters should do next. So, in order to answer that question, you'll need to pay attention to what they're doing throughout this chapter and be thinking about how they should proceed to keep themselves safe. Chapter 2. Jordan watched grimly as the snow came relentlessly down, burying the car like a gravedigger burying a coffin. He wondered if it might cover the car completely. What would happen then? Would they still be able to breathe? Or would the air slowly disappear inside the car until at last they suffocated, buried alive? If that happened, maybe they wouldn't be found until the spring thaw. Two bodies wrapped in seat covers sitting in an old junky car. Would they rule the deaths an unfortunate accident, Jordan wondered, or just attribute them to pure stupidity? But as far as Jordan could see, they had no choice but to remain in the car. At least it gave them some protection from the weather. If they tried to walk down the mountain now, they would surely freeze to death in no time. They would die of exposure. They'll look for us when they don't find us in the neighborhood, though, right? Lee asked, searching for consolation. Jordan was in no mood to console anybody. They don't know where we are, you moron, he said. They aren't mind readers. But they'll just keep looking until they find us, right? Lee pleaded, ignoring the insult. Yeah, sure. They'll search the entire universe, Jordan said. They'll dredge every river, drain every pond, and then they'll send scuba divers into the ocean to see if we're down there. What are you saying? Lee asked worriedly. That they'll never find us? That there are too many places to look? Bingo, Jordan said sharply. If we're going to get out of here, we're going to have to find a way to do it ourselves. Nobody is going to come rescue us. If the snow stops and the sun comes out tomorrow, we need to start heading down the mountain. Well, what if the snow doesn't stop? What if the sun doesn't come out? Lee asked. Then we're stuck here until there's a break in the weather, Jordan said. That's what the Party had done, he remembered. Some of them, anyway. They decided to wait for better weather and set up a winter camp. They huddled for months in their makeshift shelters, but then the food ran out, and hope soon followed. And according to the book, many of them had turned to cannibalism. Jordan recalled that the Donner Party had been trapped for months. Was it possible that this blizzard would trap him and Lee for months, he wondered? No, that couldn't be. They were only 50 miles from civilization. The world was different today than it had been back then. There were airplanes flying overhead now, pilots that could spot signals for help. But Jordan did not think that they were on any air route, and even if they were, what good would it do them? The best signal was a fire, and he didn't even have any matches. Neither did Lee. What kind of stupid person doesn't even keep a book of matches around for emergencies? Jordan asked himself as he got frustrated. He vowed that if he ever got out of this mess, he'd keep a box of matches in his glove compartment at all times. I'm hungry, Lee said. We had cheeseburgers and fries at noon, remember? Jordan said. But that had been several hours ago. He was hungry too. Jordan knew that it would be a while before they had to worry about starvation, though. They had enough stored up fat to last them a while, he figured. He remembered that when people in the Donner Party had eaten their mules' leather bridles, but Jordan didn't see anything inside the car that looked edible. Just about everything was made of vinyl or glass. Man, I wish I was home, Lee said. It might not be paradise, but at least I'd be warm. I could get some nachos and soda and watch TV. Jordan knew that Lee didn't blame him, although most people would have. Lee was just glad to have a friend. Guys at school had always picked on him because he was slow. Anybody could chase away the boredom of a dull day by playing cruel tricks on Lee. Hiding his books, stealing his gym shoes, setting him up with dates who never showed up. Lee so appreciated Jordan's friendship that he would never question anything Jordan decided to do. It would never occur to him to blame Jordan for bringing him to the mountains. Yeah, I'd like to be home too, Jordan said. He peered through the semi-darkness at the rising snow and shook his head. Man, I used to love snow when I was little. Remember playing it in the amusement park in the winter? He asked. They'd truck it in from the mountains, and we would make forts and snowmen and stuff. Yeah, Lee said. Then he paused for a minute before admitting, I'm scared, Jordan. Are you scared too? No, Jordan answered firmly. The snow will stop by morning, and then we will start walking out here. It'll be hard at first, but the further down the mountain we get, the easier it will be. Jordan lay his head back on the headrest of the seat. He closed his eyes, picturing warm and sunny skies. Then he fell into a fitful sleep. He dreamed he was on a covered wagon crossing the mountains on his way to California. His father was there too. Jordan couldn't get the oxen to pull the wagon. They just stood there stubbornly. Jordan's father was yelling, Stupid kid, can't you even get these animals to obey you? How do you expect to get to California if you can't even handle the oxen? Dad, leave me alone, Jordan cried out in a loud voice. I'm trying my best. Huh? Lee asked, coming out of his own sleep. What did you say? Nothing. I was just dreaming, I guess, Jordan said, blinking. He looked out the side window. He couldn't be sure, but it looked like the snow had stopped. That was a good sign, he told himself again, that the minute the sun had come up in the morning, they'd be on their way home. The snow would melt fast. Maybe as they got to the lower elevations of the mountains, they'd find things to eat, like berries. Jordan remembered being there in the summer with his grandfather and finding delicious red and black berries. They fished, too, catching a lot of bass from a mountain lake. His grandpa had fried the fish, and they tasted better than anything Jordan had ever eaten in his whole life. Juicy berries and fried fish. Ugh, that was so good. If only Grandpa hadn't died, Jordan thought now. He needed his grandfather. He needed some gentle, loving person to shield him from his hothead father. As the wind howled through the door beside him, Jordan drifted off again. Images of his grandfather floated through his mind. He saw the old man playing catch with him on a warm spring day. He saw him fixing one of Jordan's broken toys while Jordan stood by sobbing. He saw his grandfather wiping Jordan's tears away. The old man had never made much money, but in Jordan's young eyes he had been a great man. Jordan had loved him intensely. Jordan did not think anybody cared about him the way his grandfather had, except maybe Lee, old faithful Lee. Just before daylight, Jordan woke up. He looked out the car window and his heart sank. Huge, wet snowflakes were falling, mocking last night's hopes. How can this be happening? He asked himself. It's only October. It's mid-October. 2 weeks earlier, everyone had been complaining about the heat wave that had hit the lowlands. They had been worried about the dangerous hot winds that were blowing through the canyons, threatening to start brush fires. Then yesterday the forecasters had predicted rain, light rain. If it was snowing this hard in the mountains, Jordan was sure it was now pouring down below. What had happened, he wondered. It's not supposed to snow like this so early in the year. But then he remembered that the Donners encountered their first snowstorm in October. Jordan shook the frightening reminder out of his mind. This is the worst thing that has ever happened to me, he thought. And this is the stupidest thing I have ever done. He stared out at the whiteness until Lee woke up. Lee stretched and wiggled his fingers. I'm not just cold, I'm frozen, he announced, sitting on his hands then. You're not frozen, Jordan said. He kept his voice brisk and businesslike. As long as we stay in the car, we're going to be okay for now. I wish we could build a fire, Lee said. Boy, a fire would sure feel good. He rubbed his hands together. Do you think if we got gas from the car, we could get a fire going? Don't be dumb, Jordan said. I mean, if we start monkeying around with gas, we're probably going to blow up the car, and then we'll both be out in the open with no shelter at all. What kind of sense does that make? Yeah, I guess you're right, Lee agreed, obviously not angry about Jordan's name calling. When daylight came, shoved the door open. When daylight came, Jordan shoved open the door on the left side. He decided he should knock out some of the piled up snow away now, before the car became completely buried. Looking up, he saw gray clouds hanging low in the sky, huge billowing clouds heavy with more snow. Almost everything around him was white, and even the air smelled brittle from the cold. This must be what it's like in the Arctic Circle, he thought. Man, it's cold, Jordan muttered, kicking snow away from the door. Yeah, said Lee. Jordan tried to lick his lips and realized that they were parched. He was thirsty, really thirsty. He spotted an old soda can on the floor of the car. It was empty, but Jordan could use it to collect snow. When it melted, he and Lee would have water to drink. Jordan scooped up a can full of snow, then he quickly shut the door so no more frigid air entered their temporary home. You don't see any planes up there searching for us, do you? Lee asked. I can't see anything but clouds, Jordan said. He could not imagine any pilot stupid enough to fly out on a day like this with zero visibility. Anyway, why should anybody be searching for us up here? He reminded himself. No one even knows where we are. His parents were the only people who might be wondering where he was. No doubt his dad had called around to all the other kids that Jordan hung out with, demanding to know if he was hiding out at one of their houses. When he got nowhere with that, he had probably called the police. It sure seems to me that those cabins my grandpa and I stayed at are around here somewhere, he said as he knocked more snow away. Oh man, wouldn't that be great? Lee said, jumping on the thought at once. They could be just over the ridge, Jordan said. Then he shrugged. Or they could be miles away. Or maybe they don't even exist anymore. You sure we can't freeze to death here in the car? Lee asked, rubbing his arms and stomping his feet. Yeah, I'm sure, Jordan said. But he was not sure. At least not quite. At least for not quite a while. Then he said what he did know. Maybe they'll be dead by morning. Maybe the cold would stop them as they slept. Suddenly he decided that they could not just sit there anymore without doing something. So that brings us to the end of chapter 2. And in your Canvas page, I want you to answer what you think our characters should do next. What next steps should they take? And we'll see you tomorrow for chapter 3, where we see what they do.